Hello, this is Frank Shines with Analytics AIML team. I've got Umer Qureshi. How you doing today, Umer?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. And also we have Harvey Brown. How you doing, Harvey?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to jump right into this. We're going to talk about Lean Six Sigma and where it's going in terms of the future of work. The future of work meaning in Industry 4.0 for people in manufacturing, people in high tech and things like that, and then the startups, Silicon Valley area will be familiar with terms like lean startup and agile. Um, Technologies around machine learning and artificial intelligence is something that's sweeping the nation. So when you look at Lean Six Sigma, we're going to talk a little bit about the history, but Lean Six Sigma is basically taking the scientific method and applying it to business or to organization, to management. So when we go through and talk about Lean Six Sigma, we'll see it has a rich and storied history, and it has a step-by-step approach, which we refer to here as DMAIC. This is one of the most important parts of the methodology. We define the problem, we measure the current state, we analyze the root causes of the problem, we put in place improvement solutions, and then we control the process. So define, measure, analyze, improve, control, DMAIC. That scientific method, when done in iteration, creates a culture of continuous improvement and allows an organization to move with speed, particularly as we are now moving into these new eras of big data. So measurement before was based upon small data samples. Now it's big data. Analytics and machine learning, analytics and measurement tie into machine learning. Improvement solutions use AI tools and robotic process automation as ways of digitizing, creating a digital transformation of your former physical work processes. But all the fundamental principles of the MAIC, the fundamental principles of Lean Six Sigma never go away. They're just going to be recast as we move headlong into this crazy future of robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data, and mobile, new ways of doing things from a digital transformation perspective. Those things will just be applied, those fundamentals will just be applied in a new context. So before we jump right into the next slide, any comments or thoughts on that from either Umer or you, Harvey?
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. Whether it's related to, your search engine optimization or designing a robot for automatic automation. So we need Lean Six Sigma, and that's the base of it. You optimize your content, you optimize your robot, and that is based on the laws and principles of Lean and Six Sigma. So kind of agree with you.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. One of the things we've already seen with a number of organizations trying to jump into robotic process automation where you use these software bots is they first don't take the time to understand the underlying process, how it works, and then to streamline that process before they automate it. Otherwise, what you will do is you'll automate waste, you'll automate bad performance and bad behaviors into your process, which obviously is not something you want to scale with a robot. Anything else, Harvey?
Yeah, I guess I would like to add on top of that for each of these processes, it's the garbage in, garbage out concept. If you go ahead and you apply and you automate bad habits, then those bad habits are only going to, the effects of those bad habits are only going to be multiplied in the effects of those processes throughout your organization. So you want to make sure that you're continuing to use what has worked in the past and still able to be adaptable to our current and our future situation in order to be able to continue making gains, especially in automation. Like I said, it's one thing to know the technological programs and have the technology, but also Lean Six Sigma itself is also a technology because it helps to improve your life and to facilitate things and make it better. So,
yeah, exactly. No, those are an excellent observations. Garbage in, garbage out. We talk a lot about that with respect to Lean and Six Sigma, and if you got a lot of garbage, right? Fake news, wrong things, bad data, and all these types of things that could be out there, then you're just going to make faster bad decisions, right? So not a great thing. Excellent points, guys. Let's jump right into this. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Lean Six Sigma, over the course of the last I guess it's been about 25, 27 years since I graduated from the Air Force Academy. I started studying Lean Six Sigma. In fact, I started to study it before I left the Air Force Academy. And what attracted me to Lean Six Sigma is, unfortunately, it came under unfortunate circumstances. While at the Air Force Academy, one of my classmates, Cadet Scobie, his father, Major Scobie, was the pilot. The command pilot on the Space Shuttle Challenger that unfortunately exploded on takeoff. He and a number of his colleagues and squadron mates were there at the launch when it happened. We were all watching from the hallways there in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy. They gave us an extended break during between classes so that we could watch the launch. And of course, we all know the very sad and tragic news that followed. But as a result of that, in my mechanical engineering class, what they did is they gave us parts and components associated with the orbit ring. And it was part of an investigation, a congressional investigation and work that was done by Richard Feynman at the time. And so it was a great lesson in learning at a very early age that if you look at quality and can understand quality and use data and analytics and improve processes, you can save lives. And that lesson never left me. So went on to, just as a brief kind of overview, went on to pilot training down at Williams Air Force Base. Later went to work for the management engineering team in the Air Force Human Resource Lab, and learned a lot about all of these tools and things through the management engineering team association with Motorola University out at McClellan Air Force Base, where I got my training and then applied the concepts. Then went on to work with Westinghouse, IBM, and Ernst & Young, and do similar types of work with companies around the world. So here are the things that has been learned over time. It starts with the old bell curve, right? They call it the Gaussian curve, but back in the 1800s, and we can probably go all the way back to early age of artisan and craftsmanship, where for the first time after we became agrarians, we stopped roaming as nomads, and we settled down into communities for the first time with farming. That was the first time that people got to really share information about how they do things and how they make things. And the sharing of that information in stories are basically processes that were the forerunners of process maps that are often used today in Lean Six Sigma principles. The first thing that we always do is try to understand what happens, then what happens, then what happens, then what happens, right? We're basically mapping the process. So we go all the way back to those early stages of craftsmanship when someone shared the process map through a story to people to show them how to do things. Around that time, this guy, Gauss, C.F. Gauss, he came up with this idea of a normal curve. If he looked at data and phenomena, and over again, he saw that the shape of the data in the form of a normal curve showed up over and over again. And the basis that normal curve, provides the basis and the foundation upon which sits everything related to the scientific method across every industry, whether you're talking medical, manufacturing, high tech, whatever. And so with that foundation, we saw people like Frederick Taylor work with Ford. We saw mass production take place from the UK across the world. We saw Dr. Schuhart from Bell Labs at the time look at a lot of these telecommunication processes and call center operations and notice these patterns. And he took the bell-shaped curve, turned it on its side, and created what's called a control chart in 1924. That control chart, without that control chart today, it would be impossible to make computers, mass manufacture computers or iPhones or cell phones of any type or devices or electronics, or create the internet, the entire backbone of the internet at a level and at a scale that would be affordable to people. So what Lean Six Sigma and all these principles do is they provided kind of that underlying foundation for everything that we've seen since then. Lean Six Sigma really began to take off, however, during World War II. During World War II, the men went off to fight the war. A lot of the women were left behind. We need to figure out how to work smarter, not harder, because this was a war of attrition, meaning that as you run out of bullets and weapons and planes and armament, you begin to lose the war. You can't resupply your supply chains, and therefore you cannot fight a two-front war. We are fighting a war in both the Pacific and the European theaters. the principles that people like Dr. Deming and Feigenbaum and others and Schuhart and Duran brought to American industrial production actually helped us win the war. In fact, those were called war secrets, Z1, for many decades after the war, because they were the underlying principles of production that allowed us to win the war. So those secrets were held tightly by the U.S. government. The thing that next happened is General MacArthur, and being a former Air Force person, military person, I'm just kind of always interested in military history. But MacArthur brought Dr. W. Edwards Deming over to Japan in 1947, and Deming, of course, explained to the Japanese that, yes, your country is decimated, but if you will apply the principles that we're about to teach you, that we refined during the war and tested out with our Census Bureau and with Bell Labs, we can bring the same type of success to you over the course of the next 5 years. And as everyone probably already knows, they beat that prediction by 1 year. Within 4 years, Japan had turned their economy around and was exporting high-quality products around the world. Many of those were picked up by companies like Toyota. Toyota came to the United States. They looked at the assembly line with Ford and others the first time they visited. People like Taiichi Ono, they went back, tried to apply the principles. It didn't work. They came back a second time, and Taiichi Ono happened to be in a supermarket. He noticed that when people removed items from the shelf in a supermarket, whether it was, a carton of milk or a loaf of bread, then someone else would replace that particular product. And that's when he took the concept of an assembly line and a supermarket, combined those two components, and came up with the principle of lean, which we'll talk about more in a moment. Then a little bit later, as Motorola was on the brink of becoming bankrupt, they worked with a gentleman by the name of Bill Smith, who was at Motorola, and Michael Harry, Dr. Michael Harry, who I've had the opportunity to learn so much from, and has always been a great mentor to me. Michael Harry and Bill Smith came up with the concept of Six Sigma, which is that define, measure, analyze, improve approach that we talked about, that methodology later. With that methodology, they transferred that information on to people like Larry Bossidy of Allied Signal, Jack Welch of General Electric. Both of those executives embraced the idea, and then the concepts began to expand across every industry around the world pretty quickly throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Then, of course, we moved into the internet era, and we saw the next phase, what we call Generation 3 of Lean Six Sigma, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. So let me just pause for any comments or thoughts from Harvey, Umer, before we move on. But that's kind of a brief history of Lean Six Sigma.
So
yeah, I think okay. Okay. So yeah, I agree with you that this is a really good explanation that you explained. So I studied a bit about the Motorola, and I was pretty amazed that, during that time, the Japanese technology was famous for the quality. So they tried to give them the taste of their own recipe. So they hired the engineers from all around the world and just focused on the quality. And that's what made them really successful in that era and still. So still I'm using Motorola Nexus phone. So I really like their quality. So still they are on the same line.
Yeah, no, great point. The Moto phone, and some of the things that they have been able to do since almost going bankrupt and running into dire consequences for their company have really paid off for them.
Yes, I would like to add, also I have to give credit for the Jack Welch of the GEs, so those leaders that took the initiative to learn a concept, because a lot of times when people are introduced to new concepts, there's always hesitancy, because it's kind of like, oh, we're used to doing this certain process, this thing a certain way, even if it hasn't really worked. And, you know, to be able to learn a new concept and to be able to take those principles that someone reaches out and teaches you and be able to apply them and see the success that, you know, that you could get when applying those principles is very, very key. And so that the fact that, you know, Lean Six Sigma has been able to be reinvented and used, and those concepts be used and improved upon, and those methodologies of Six Sigma and Lean to be combined together to be used, especially in today's environment, I think it's very, very key that this type of methodology is still going to be around for a very, very long time.
Yeah, no, great point. That timeline shows that it always continues to evolve. There's a good, an excellent body of knowledge that continuously gets improved upon over time. And as long as Lean Six Sigma practitioners and professionals continue to have that spirit of lifelong learning and adaptability, then I agree with you. I think we'll see it continue long into the future. So what exactly are Lean and Six Sigma? I'm just going to oversimplify this to a degree just for simplicity so that everyone understands it, and we can always talk about some of the nuances over time. So when we talk about Lean, we're really talking about simplicity and speed of design. So when you hear the term Lean, a lot of this is driven by the concept of what they call removing waste. And waste isn't like waste of people and waste of, you know, things. People, obviously, the work they do, they don't consider to be wasteful. So let's be clear about that. What we're really referring to is non-value added or less value added types of activities. So if in fact there are 5 steps required to, you know, get an approval for a particular for a particular signature in the process, and you really only need 2 signatures and for the approval process, and you can reduce those number of steps, then those extra steps would be considered non-value added. And so what you're constantly looking for is, what are we doing? And if we look at the step-by-step actions that we're taking, which ones really could we potentially remove and still create value for the customer? And the customer is always the center point through which we define value. Okay, it's not based upon the financial department or the CEO or the marketing department or someone in sales or someone in operations or logistics. Okay, it's always defined from the perspective of the customer. So what we find is if we look and understand the voice of the customer and we know what they need, and we can set the pace of our production meaning transactional processes such as digital processes or office processes or manufacturing hands-on physical processes, doesn't matter. Any type of process has to be moving. The rate at which you deliver different steps in the process, they must be in sync with the pace of the demand in the marketplace. And that's one of the most critical and important things that Taiichi Ono figured out from the supermarket. Someone removes a loaf of bread. Someone notices that loaf of bread is removed and there's a hole on the shelf. They then replace that loaf of bread, right? So now you know the pace. If you're watching the bread disappear at 25 loaves for every 10 minutes, then you know you need to set the pace of someone coming out and re-delivering it at that pace. That's called the drumbeat, also called the tack time. So in Lean, what you want to do is try to set the drumbeat of your business, synchronize all the steps in almost like an orchestrated fashion to the pace of the demand of your product or your services. And if you do that and align those things, and what happens is waste goes away. Inefficiencies begin to disappear. And so there are tools and things that we use to help us with that. We remove complexity. We look at ways that we can have visual control. So if in fact you don't know that the bread is being removed from the shelf, 25 loaves every 15 minutes, then you can't react to it. You can't plan for it, right? On the other hand, if you see the visual control, you can see it moving, and over time you can see some sort of chart, and everyone sees the chart. Okay, here it is. Next, it's 10 minutes, it's 14 minutes. Guess what? It's coming on 15 minutes. Get ready to move the next 25 loaves, right? Then everyone is in sync, and everyone knows the pace at which they must complete things. The other thing is it means you don't overproduce. So don't bring out 40 loaves of bread when there's only going to be room for 25. Right? So now you're not overproducing. So again, that drives out a lot of waste. On the Six Sigma side of things, Six Sigma starts with the voice of the customer, tries to understand what are those critical to quality metrics that are important for the voice of the customer, and particularly when you're dealing with more complex types of problems, you'll use Six Sigma tools and things to reduce the variation in the process and then apply kind of this more structured DMAIC model. A lean project, there are certain things in lean that can be just do-its that can be done literally in a matter of minutes or hours. There are things that might take a day or two. And then there are what we call Kaizen events that typically take about a week. And then to implement those changes could take another 15 to 30 days, but they're still pretty fast. Six Sigma, on the other hand, certain things you can use Six Sigma and some of the tools and so forth in a matter of, minutes or days. But for the most part, these projects take weeks or months to implement. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between lean versus Six Sigma at a high level. What happened, as was already alluded to by Harvey, is the practitioners under the American Society for Quality and other bodies of authority decided that the body of knowledge from these two areas should be combined. It made sense to combine them. They've been combined with organizational change. They've been combined with project management. So when you look at the entire body of Lean Six Sigma, it includes all of these components intertwined, so to speak. Comments, thoughts, Harvey, Umer? Why don't you go first, Harvey?
Yes, so I believe that, like I said, lean is important because lean focuses on not only speed, but also making sure that you're not only working hard, but you're working smart. And working smarter in today's society, in most cases, is working faster because we're living in a society in which there's a lot of instant gratification, but that instant gratification has crossed over to business because that's the voice of the customer. The customer is going to want something that's going to be high quality and is going to be fast. And if your competition is completing a process or getting a service to that customer faster, then that's what you're having to compete against. But the Six Sigma side of it is also focused on that, the quality of it, and be able to solve those problems. And not only just solving problems in which you're improving processes, but also in solving problems in which you're creating new value for your consumers as well.
Excellent points. Umer, anything else?
Yeah, I would agree with Harvey that both of them are important, and lean is pretty more important because you need to be providing the things to the customer on time. Like talking about our own company, Customer USB, we always focus on the voice of customers, and that is customer wants the quality. Sometimes they are tight on budget, they want to go like low on the pricing, but the thing is that you can't compromise on the quality. If your quality is good, then you'll stay in the market, else you'll be getting lots of products back. But on the other hand, if you can't deliver them on time, then your quality is of no use because you're taking too much time. So both of these combined together will give your business the highest impact. So I think both of these should be used together, like you suggested, and it's going on now.
Right. Yeah. And the speed up of change is accelerating. And so, both you and Harvey bring up excellent points around the speed of getting that product on time in a timely manner to the customer. Let me just kind of add on one other component of this that you guys kind of touched on. So here's the thing that's happening in the world today around the voice of the customer. The customer doesn't know what they need. They don't know what they want, right? Deming was often famous for saying no customer ever asked for pneumatic tires. No customer asked for the light bulb, right? We know today that no customer asked for the iPod or the iTunes or iPad, right? No customer asked for the iPhone. Many customers have no idea what is ready to happen with respect to machine learning and data and analytics and artificial intelligence. They're not asking. The customers only come to know what we and our competitors teach them to expect from the marketplace. So one of the things that I think we're going to see happen very rapidly is the digitization of everything that's physical is going to happen at such a rapid pace that we're going to have to anticipate the voice of the customer and deliver to them things that they don't even know today that they want tomorrow. In that same spirit, the pace at which we're going to have to deliver that, we may deliver something to them And within literally a matter of days or minutes, a competitor is going to probably come out with something that's better and faster, right? Which means we're going to have to respond back again with the next incremental improvement or breakthrough improvement if required in order to remain competitive in the marketplace. Okay, last slide. We're going to talk this at a high level. I threw some ideas around Web 2.0 when I was having a conversation several years ago with several executives. And so I left that in there just to kind of push us towards where things are moving, you know, obviously well beyond Web 2.0 into this new digital transformation age of mobile and social and artificial intelligence. So let's go through this. The law of the market, the law of focus, the law of complexity and cost, the law of flexibility, and the law of velocity. So these are kind of the principles or laws of lean. The law of the market, the customer defines quality, and what we want to do is look at the highest priority for where we can improve things. So any customer in the future, almost any retailer, for example, and almost anyone who's in advertising, right? They're trying to figure out how to compete against Amazon if you're in retail, and against Facebook or Google if you're in advertising or in media, right? Because those three primary players, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, they're setting the new course of wealth creation for the future on digital platforms. And so if you stop and you're in IKEA and you're trying to figure out how do I break in and understand the next definition of quality and what it is that the customer is going to need, you're probably going to have to look to Amazon and what they've been able to do and figure out how you're going to close that gap. Clearly, one of the important parts of defining quality from the prioritization of the customer's perspective in retail, it's price and it's speed of delivery, right? Now, most retailers think they've got the speed covered because their products are right there and the person can walk into the store. But the reality is most customers are saying, I don't want to drive out somewhere and pick up things. I don't want to be in traffic. I don't want to get my, millennials are saying, I don't want to get my information that way. I want to order it up on a smartphone from wherever I happen to be in the world. And whenever I show up at the house, it shows up, in a box. So price has to be really low. The only way you can reduce price is you have to reduce some of your physical footprint, because otherwise a lot of your price that you're charging to the customer isn't going to be embedded in that physical cost and all the logistics. On the other hand, if you can find a way to think about those two high priorities in retail, speed and variety, and do it in a way that allows you to transform your organization in a digital way, but at the same time provide some modicum of physical products that people can come in and touch and feel, then you probably have a good opportunity. One way of thinking of it is what Amazon recently did, right? They know digital is not the end all and be all, right? They set up their own Amazon Go stores where someone can come into a physical place in Seattle and purchase through their smartphone without a registered agent or without anyone at a register in the store, cash register. The other thing that they've done is they purchase Whole Foods. And by purchasing Whole Foods, they realize that there are certain things that customers are going to want to touch and feel. And what they'll do is they'll marry their data and everything that they've learned from all of their years in the digital world. They'll figure out how to marry that with artificial intelligence and things in the physical world of Whole Foods. They'll see how people move into the stores and move around the stores. They'll see how frequently peaches go bad, right? Or bananas begin to brown. And what they'll do is they'll figure out all the timing and so forth associated with that. And they'll streamline those processes so that those bananas and peaches only arrive at just the optimal time to get the optimal number of customers to buy those. And they won't carry more than needed. And they'll reduce the amount of space required for all the other excess peaches or bananas, right? They're going to marry the physical stuff that they learn with what we saw with Taiichi Ono looking at a supermarket and people removing bread and butter and milk cartons from the shelf. They're going to marry that with internet speed and artificial intelligence to understand physically what needs to be where, when, but from the perspective of digital. And then anything that doesn't have to be touched and felt real time in the store, they're going to make that available through their warehouses and through their normal digital channels. And of course, they'll speed those up. They'll use drones and things of that sort. So that's the part of the law of the market and how the law of the market is beginning to change, right? Comments, thoughts, anything that you guys are seeing from the voice of the customer, law of market perspective. Okay. Next is a law of focus. So let's suppose you figured out that variety of product, price, and the quality of those products are critical. Then you're going to take all of the different categories of things that you could define from the perspective of the customer, and you're going to narrow it down to the Pareto of the few most critical, right? Also referred to as the critical to quality types of metrics. But you're only going to focus on those few vital, most critical things, because you're not going to be able to beat every competitor on every front. You're going to have to identify strategically where you can provide the most value based upon your history, based upon the capabilities and skills and things that you have in your organization. And then with that law of focus, you now know where the market is. You know where you're headed. You've got a few things that you know are going to be most important. So now you've got a focus on a few areas. Once you have a focus on a few areas, now you can reduce the complexity of all the other things that aren't aligned with that focus, right? Once you reduce the complexity, you automatically will drive down costs, right? So in the example we were just talking about, the complexity is that you've got a lot of different things that are probably sitting in the shelf in Whole Foods, right? And what will happen is Amazon will look at all of that stuff and they'll figure out what's really sitting around for a long time and what isn't. And the things that are sitting around for a long time, they're no longer going to put it in a retail outlet. They're going to put those in warehouses, nearby warehouses and so forth, and run it through their normal Amazon logistics. And all the things that get consumed very quickly, only those things they'll keep readily available there for the consumer. And as a result, they're going to be able to bring down the prices. They brought down the complexity, so the prices are automatically going to come down because there's going to be less floor space that consume cost and energy and resources that drive up the prices. Once they go through that process, then what's going to happen is necessarily all of their processes are going to be faster. And once your processes are now faster because you remove the complexity, you have greater flexibility. So now you can probably bring a lot more variety of different types of products into that store and moving them through at a much faster pace, right? And you'll be able to figure out, where do I bring in nearby drones and smaller pod logistic warehouses that are community-based as opposed to a big national warehouse, and create even more flexibility for the delivery of products on time, based upon only when that customer wants that product or service. And then finally, the law of velocity obviously then becomes an advantage to you. And in the era of internet speed, then it becomes really critical. So as your velocity improves, your work in process costs and all those things also drops as well. So that allows you then to further, reduce your prices and provide more options to your customers. All right. So some of the things you might be able to do is say, for these particular products, we're going to have a 1 hour delivery time, or 1 hour, or test out a promo for a 2 hour delivery, as opposed to a 1 day or 24 hour delivery, because you now have this law of velocity working on your side. Okay. So those are kind of the principles of Lean as we think about the history of Lean Six Sigma, from the early days of Frederick Taylor and Toyota and Ford and Taiichi Ohno, Michael Harry, Dr. Deming, Womack and Bossidy and Jack Welch and all of those individuals, until the point that, we moved into the era of the iPhone about 10 years ago with Steve Jobs, and then began to think about how to combine both Lean and Six Sigma and project management and Agile and Lean startup concepts, artificial intelligence and machine learning, to look at how that can be applied in an example where Amazon is moving into the physical world, and people like IKEA and others in the retail space are going to have to move from physical to become more digitally transformed. And if they do not, they will probably not survive. how those principles of lean can assist in that effort, provide the foundation for all the types of automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning that we'll see impacting our lives in the coming years. Final comments or thoughts?
Okay, yeah, I'd go first. And during the start principle of lean, it's always the voice of the customer. If your customer is happy, customer is gonna buy from you. And investor, will try your new services.
Sure.
And if you focus on what customer needs are, like some customers, they want a speedy delivery. If you invest in some products that takes time or are complex, then you can't sell your product to those customers. So we have seen that those companies who have focused on their customer needs and who have brought in things that customer wants are really successful today, like Facebook, like Google. So they know what is the voice of the customer. And since with this new digital era, I want to add into your thing that you said that the customer is confused. So yeah, exactly. The customer is really confused. So in today's world, if I have to find something, I have so much options in front of me, whether I should go to Facebook, should I go to LinkedIn, should I go to Google?
Right.
So it's kind of a combination of everything.
Yeah, a lot of misinformation out there in front of the customers as well. But you're exactly right. There's so many channels that they can go to, and which makes it hard for the small businesses and medium businesses to figure out where to find their customers and prospect for those customers and get those leads and things as well. So, yeah, I agree with you. The complexity is just it's grown exponentially over the last 5-10 years.
Yes, exactly. But other things are really good that you, on the other hand, you find so many businesses to choose from, and then every business is competing others. If some is saying we can deliver in 5 days, the other is saying 3 days, and the other maybe ship you over the night. So
right,
that's good as well. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of options for customers then too. Right.
Yeah. So I definitely believe that. With the principles of lean, the good thing is that you have a method in which you can think and strategize to figure out how to better reach your customers and how to better, gain better feedback for the customers. But also the most important part is the execution and the feedback you get from that. So you see exactly what works, how customers react to it, and how customers react to the changes. So when it comes to the voice of the customers, yes, the customers don't always know what they want, but you can figure out if you put a product there or you get a service out in front of them, then you know exactly how they react to it. They're going to let you know if they need it or if they don't. And the customers will even tell you, giving feedback, especially when you interact with your customers more, you get to know your customers, then they'll tell you. But you like I said, it's one of those things in which you have to ask. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to ask.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much data these days that the data can help you understand, even if the customer can't articulate certain things. You're going to have to use the data to draw insights. Sometimes even customers will tell you, and that will be really helpful, but they won't necessarily know all the nuances of how do you now convert that into a new process or a new product or new service. And that's where the hard work comes in. So excellent
Exactly.
points.
Yeah. I would add one more thing here that some customers don't know what they sometimes really want. So the data analytics is really good, and it helps you figure out what is the voice of the customer, even if the customer is confused. Like if you go on the Amazon, so if you buy a cell phone, it recommends you to buy the headphone along with it, hand-frees, and then it recommends you to buy some pouches and other products that are related to it, saying that, customers who buys this phone have bought these items as well. So it's kind of like a suggestion, but a really good suggestion that fulfills the demand of the customer, but the customer doesn't know it or it's confused. So
Yeah, exactly. You know, I was just looking at our presentation here. You know, the reason why we developed this particular slide where you can see Lean Six Sigma, artificial intelligence, agile, voice of the customer, root cause analysis, DMAIC, big data, all these types of things is because overlaying all of that or underlying all of that, you can see all of these different formulas and confusion and data and metrics and right and algorithms and unfortunately that's the reality of the new world we live in. So how do we take the complexity? That's our role as Analytics AIML.com. What we try to do is take the complexity, simplify that for folks, for small and medium business owners and staff members so that they can be successful. Well, listen, we appreciate everyone's time. We're going to go ahead and wrap up and look forward to speaking with you all again in the future. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,